So today, everybody, I'm working on welding up this notch that I've cut out. I think if you watched my last video, you would have seen that I left the edges at a 90-degree angle. However, I was having fitment issues over on this side where the oil pan was actually touching the frame. So what I did was I just kind of cut it out at this angle. I'm not sure what this angle is. I just made one up real quick, cut it out. So what I'm about to do now is take some flat bar and weld it in, but I want you to kind of see the shape of what's going on here. If you look at this upper edge, it kind of sweeps up. So what I did to compensate for that was I measured everything out. It's kind of hard to see my measurements there, but I measured how far it is in total, and then I measured where it started to rise up and how much the rise was to give me a little bit of triangulation. I bought some 3-inch and 2-inch flat bar from Home Depot, and what I'm going to go ahead and do at this point is, instead of trying to cut those triangles out of this, because I'm going to need to cut it down like this, roughly, is I'm going to go ahead and weld these two plates together, and then I'm going to weld this into position and then cut those parts out afterwards. I think that's going to be a bit easier to do, because trying to cut this flat bar without a good way to hold it is kind of a pain in the butt. Even just cutting it off like this was somewhat difficult. So I'm just going to cut it off with my Sawzall after I get it in there. I was using a cutting wheel, but I destroyed my cutting wheel. So I've resorted to the Sawzall, but it's actually working pretty well to do that. I cut out those two notches on the sides with it, and it worked just fine. So if that's all you have available, you can do that. So at this point, I'm going to grab my welder, weld these two plates together, and then tack weld this plate into position on the bottom and on the top, and then I'm going to cut those parts out and get to welding the rest of it. Alright, everybody, so I did what I said I was going to do, and that was weld that plate into position and then cut off the excess from the top. I did that using my reciprocating Sawzall, whatever you want to call it, right there. And I came back, ground up the welds, made them look a little nicer, because I just have this crappy little Lincoln electric welder that does a really poor job at welding. It makes a huge mess of everything. So I cleaned it all up. I came back actually and tacked it up some more just to make sure that I got good penetration. Turn that welder all the way up to the highest volt or amperage setting. And it looks like we're good to go. I was going to weld in a couple of gussets for this here, but I don't really think that's going to give it much rigidity back to the frame. So actually what I've determined I'm going to do is, up in this front area underneath the radiator core support, between the two frame rails here, it's pretty empty. So I think later on I'm going to weld up another brace down there. You can see right here, this is what I'm talking about. Going from that side of the frame over to this side. It's pretty empty in there. So later on I will fabricate some sort of bracing to go in there to stiffen everything back up. Although people do this all the time with the frames, and apparently there's no issue with that. But I want the truck to be nice and stiff. I'm going to set it up on like a 5-link suspension later on with coilovers in the rear, and I've already upgraded to polyurethane bushings in the front, and I just want it to be a more sporty ride. So at this point I'm just going to slap a little black paint on it. I'm going to bolt the transmission to the back of this thing, and I'm going to slide that down in there, see what I've got to do about my crossmember, but that's for another video. For now, I want to thank you for watching. Make sure you subscribe to my channel. Make sure you follow along as I get this build completed. And thank you for watching again.